Welcome to Philosophy and Critical Thinking, the basics. Today we're going to be discussing the free will problem. The free will problem in philosophy surrounds the issue of determinism. Determinism is the view that everything that happens in the world and has happened in the world has been completely determined by the past and the laws of nature. The laws of nature would be things like the law of thermodynamics, the law of gravity, relativity, all those kinds of things, which will fully cause everything that's happened right now and will fully cause everything that will happen in the future. And the issue of determinism is, with human beings, with our brains and our minds, that if determinism is universal, that this applies to everything, including our minds, that means all of our actions and all of our thoughts would have been fully caused by the past and laws of nature. And we don't have any control over the past or the laws of nature. That's not up to us. So, the question raised from this is, if determinism is true, how can we have free will? One answer to this question comes from a group of philosophers called Determinists. Determinists believe that determinism is true, that our minds, so our thoughts and actions, are all fully caused by the past and laws of nature, and from this, we don't have free will, that free will is false. Another group of philosophers are called Libertarians. Now, Libertarians in this sense is not the same as in our previous tutorial regarding justice and distributive justice, when we're talking about libertarians like Robert Nozick, who are talking about property rights. This is regarding the free will problem, a different use of the word libertarian. So be careful not to be confused that if someone talking about the free will problem says they're a libertarian, doesn't necessarily mean that they hold the same views as political libertarians regarding property rights. The libertarian believes regarding free will is that we do have free will, that free will is true, but it's because determinism is false, which means they don't believe that our minds and our thoughts and actions are fully caused by the past and laws of nature, that our minds are exempt from the past and the laws of nature, unlike everything else in the world. Sometimes this can be due to a religious kind of reasoning, that human beings have an immortal or immaterial soul, and that gives us the ability to be exempt. Some libertarians will hold non-religious views from this, things like quantum theory, some indeterminism in quantum theory, to try and show that there's an exemption from determinism there. But overall, libertarians universally believe that free will is true because determinism is false. Another group of philosophers are called compatibilists. Compatibilists believe that determinism is true. So they agree with determinists that the human minds are fully caused by the past and the laws of nature, but they also believe that free will is true even though determinism is true, that they're compatible with one another. One of the general reasons compatibilists might give for this is that if we are doing what we want to do, if we're acting in accordance with our desires and our values, and there's no kind of coercion going on or some kind of internal compulsion driving us to do what we don't want to do, as long as we're acting in a way where we want to, that's enough to say that we have free will, that the question of whether what we want to do and what we desire to do was fully caused by the past and laws of nature is irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is that we're doing what we want to do. So this is the view of the compatibilists. What causes the free will problem to be such a problem in philosophy is the issue surrounding moral responsibility. The general assumption most people will have that if we don't have free will, if free will is false, then no one is morally responsible for anything. We'll tend to have an intuition that tells us that in order to hold anyone morally responsible for something, then they have to be shown that they were doing it of their own free will. If we can show that they weren't acting of their own free will, then that says something about whether we should hold them morally responsible, whether we should blame them for a bad action or praise them for a good action. So this seems to be the main issue regarding the problem of free will here. So it feels like something we don't want to give this up, because if we have to give up free will, then we also have to give up moral responsibility as well. So if that's accepted, if we accept that if we don't have free will, then no one is morally responsible, then if you're a determinist, then you'd have to say no one is morally responsible for anything. So if you're going to say that free will is false, then no one's morally responsible. However, if you're a compatibilist or a libertarian and you hold this view, because you're saving free will, you can save the issue of moral responsibility. You can still blame people and praise people for their actions, because we still have free will. So the issue of moral responsibility falls on the determinists here, who believe that free will is a necessary condition for moral responsibility. Semicompatibilists are a group of philosophers that take on the issue of moral responsibility, but in a different way. They agree with the determinists and the compatibilists that determinism is true, that minds and thoughts and actions are fully caused by the past and laws of nature. But they will agree with the determinists that free will is false due to this. They will be on the side of the determinists. But they will still hold that people are still morally responsible for their actions. They will reject the claim that if we don't have free will, then we can't hold people morally responsible for their actions. This is where the disagreement comes in. There can be different reasons to why a semi-compatibilist will hold this view. Sometimes they'll use a pragmatic approach, like saying even though you don't have free will, if we can find out the reasons like why you're doing something, even though they're fully caused, we'll find out how we can use praise and blame, which is better for society. For instance, if we find out somebody's a compulsive liar, that we might be able to blame them for lying all the time, because if we didn't blame people for lying all the time, that would create a horrible world to live in, even though that person might not have the free will to be a compulsive liar, or to not be a compulsive liar. So that can be that kind of style of semi-compatibilist. But ultimately, semi-compatibilists are on the same side of the determinists, that determinism is true and free will is false, but we can still hold people morally responsible for their actions. If you want more information, you can go onto the website www.philosophycriticalthinking.com, or you can go into the description, and there's some Amazon links to some books on free will which have different positions. The first one is Sam Harris, Free Will. This is a book arguing for the determinists' position, that determinism is true and free will is false. The other book is from Daniel Dennett called Elbow Room. This is a book arguing for compatibilism. The third book is from Richard Swinburne called Mind, Body and Free Will. And this book is an argument for libertarianism. So if you want a good idea from the arguments from each of those positions, these three books would be a good start. So you've got one for determinism, one for compatibilism, and one for libertarianism. In our next video, we're going to move on to the philosophy of science. We're going to be looking at three views of how we should look at science, or how science is conducted. One is falsification, the other is paradigms, and the third is research programs. If you want to stay in tune for that, please subscribe and click the bell.